Hi, I'm Dominic mcgough. I'm the CEO of Customs Plus. Customs Plus are an auditor of historical customs documentation, and we're a supplier of enabling for global trade. If you think compliance is expensive, try non-compliance. It's a direct quote from one of our clients. Part of our job is to help companies. It's been really interesting today for me to listen to how you're looking to facilitate trade, how you're looking to improve trade. One of the challenges is that from a customs perspective, we really talk about compliance being your responsibility. So if you're the importer of record or the exporter of record, you have fiscal responsibilities on the value of the invoice, on the wording of the invoice, and of what you actually say the product is. Often these are mislooked and overlooked by clients. So we really talk about, I'm going to talk more than at you at the slide. So the slides are available for you to review. You'll have access to them as we go forward. You really look for how you can facilitate trade. And one of the things that hasn't come out today is Incoterms and the understanding of Incoterms. So as an exporter, it is your responsibility to make your product attractive. To make your product attractive, you need to be aware of all the costs associated with buying the goods that will ultimately enable you to compete with a local supplier in that market. And that's where trade and compliance comes into play. There's no point having the cheapest product in the market if you sell the product and it's held at customs at the port of entry because it doesn't comply with local rules and regulations. Your product will not be available in the market. So really when we talk about this, customers are really working within the compliance module and the responsibility is on you. So we're not trying to frighten you from the export market. We're not trying to inhibit you for trade. What we're saying is recognize your responsibilities, embrace your responsibilities, and enable yourself to compete in markets that are out there. So supply chain security is a massive problem. You've heard the other speakers today talk about the changes and the geopolitical. But ultimately, 9/11 had a massive impact on our supply chain markets. We then have, every time there's a COVID, every time there's a E. coli expansion, there are new rules and regulations on moving products around the world, especially foodstuffs. They are more and more compliance and more rules and regulations. So as we go forward, the liability comes back to yourselves. There's one point I did want to stress, and ultimately, if you are exporting product that contain any of the product that is of American origin, you have a responsibility, and you will and can end up tangling with the US government. So you have to be aware of what the product is, where the product is from, and what the product is used for. We've talked a lot about the Ukraine. There's a lot of cases today where product has been purchased in the United Kingdom. I'll give you an example of vapes. Vapes were purchased in the United Kingdom. They were exported to the UAE. They were then exported from the UAE and smuggled into Iran. The batteries were taken from those vapes, and the batteries were then used to power drones, which were then used in the war in Ukraine. So there's a compliance and dual compliance issue that you as exporters and importers, and indeed as traders, have to be aware of. So this is BIS. So BIS stands for the Bureau of Industry and Security in the United States. And they ultimately are tracking technology. So they're tracking part numbers, they're tracking items, they're tracking products, and around the world the products are being moved. So this is where the activity comes back and forward. So we now talk about the general factor. So you need to be responsible for the destination of the export, aware of what the product is, a listing of the product, and how the product moves forward. But really be aware just of where we are and what we need to do in the geopolitical world right now. The opportunities are immense. The trade opportunities are going to be enormous going forward. There are inhibitors to trade, but there's also enablers to trade. We talk very much about what happens if it goes wrong, and there are penalties, there are requirements. So please, if you're exporting, check the market you're exporting to, check if you're working with a distributor, if you're working with a direct importer, if you're the direct exporter, if you're exporting to a third party, where are they sending your products to after they've received them? You're responsible if you're either manufacturing that product or you're the origin of that product. And the life cycle of the goods is critically important, and it's going to be more important from an environmental issue and from an associate liability issue. So the US government are pretty aggressive right now on the fines. UK customs are auditing clients. The B word I realised was not mentioned, but Lindsay's in the industry, so would understand. In 2020, there were 30 million customs declarations in the United Kingdom. In 2022, the admitted number from UK government was 350 million customs declarations. To give you a size of the scale, if a customs declaration is £75, which is probably about mean average market, that means that the cost of customs declarations to the UK consumer or UK importers was £26 billion. So we're all involved in compliance. We're all involved in making products move. You can actually lead to prison time. I say this to people and they get very concerned about it and worried about it. Don't be. If you're following the rules and regulations, which are available, by the way, this isn't a game, there is a structure, there's a way of doing business. But interpret the rules, stick within the rules, do not try and do something that is outside the bounds of possibility. Trust the advice you get from your freight forwarder, trust the advice you get from your customs broker, but remember, they are acting on your behalf. In the eyes of law, in the eyes of customs, you are the compliant party. You can't just turn around and say, my broker told me to do this. My customs freight forwarder said to do this. So have it in writing, have it in structure, and work forward. So large penalties are involved if you don't comply. Large benefits are involved if you do comply. So this is just an example. We just did this presentation in Ireland, and often our Irish partners were saying to us that they didn't really know what the bottom line was. So we tried to create a simple guide as to what's the bottom line from Irish customs, and it's applicable for UK customs. If you misdeclare a product in the United Kingdom and you don't pay the duty at the correct time of declaration of import, customs will charge you the duty from the time of the declaration to the time of the reconciliation. So they'll continue to charge you the interest every day that you haven't paid the duty amount that should have been paid in full at the original date of import. My job involves working both for and with customs. We've just done a recovery for a company in the Northwest. We're importing fish from Vietnam and overpaid customs by £800,000. They've recovered that money from HMRC. On the flip side, I was involved with a company importing Norwegian salmon incorrectly, and we've just settled with HMRC that we're paying 1.3 million in duties that should have been paid at time of import and were not paid. Now, they're very large amounts and very structured amounts, but ultimately what happened down to Incoterms, the Incoterms from the Norwegian supplier of the fish was DDP. The product was imported into the United Kingdom. The customs broker didn't have a VAT number for the Norwegian exporter, so we used the UK company's import VAT number. As far as customs are concerned, that made the importer of record. He was liable for the VAT and liable for the duty on any fish that was imported. So be aware of the need to protect your IORI number. Be aware of the need to have in writing terms and conditions with your freight forwarder and instructions to your freight forwarder, because the liability will ultimately be yours. This isn't to stop you exporting. This is actually to say, be aware of what you're doing, and you'll export effectively, and you'll recover yourself and protect yourself from potential liabilities. That's it.